income is below $250,000. So if your income is below $250,000, these tax cuts will just continue on forever. But if your income is over $250,000, you're going to see a tax increase under Obama. Under McCain, it's the other way around. If you're, the higher up your income is, the much larger tax cut you get. So it's really much more of the same in terms of Bushonomics, and the Obama folks want to want the voters to really see that and to connect the Bush economy with the McCain economic plan.
I don't quite see how you sell that. How that is supposed to make sense. Giving tax breaks to people over 250.
Well, you know, I covered the Bush White House for 3 years, and what they would say is that, well, you know, who pays most of the taxes in this country? And that's their argument. Like, you know, the upper income people pay the vast majority of taxes, they'll say, and thus they're going to get, if you have a tax cut across the board, they're going to get a bigger bounty from that because they have more skin in the game to begin with. I mean, so that's the argument. And the argument is, if you let these people keep their own money and don't let the government have it, it'll be put to use in the economy in other ways. People invest in business, they'll hire people, and thus the economy will grow, expand, and people will have jobs, and the labor market will tighten, and wages will go up, and so on. I mean, that's the argument they make. Whether or not that works, still, you know, with what Jared just talked about, you know, what we saw with wage actually declines in the last 7 years is another matter. From
a layman's point of view, though, it would seem that those people over that income range, richer folks, there's fewer of them. Oh yes, they pay a much high, if they pay a much higher tax rate, we're getting all this money in from a smaller group of people. But it would seem that getting a little from a lot would make more sense. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
There's a lot more people down here on the scale than there are up here.
I think you're right, and so politically, you could argue that the McCain approach, which is, you know, does actually very little for families of middle and lower incomes and does a great deal for high income. It's not a very smart political approach in terms of gathering votes. But I think, riffing off of Michael's point, that one of the strongest arguments Obama has right now is that we have just come out of what may be, at least in my lifetime as an economist, the best natural experiment of supply side or trickle-down economics that we've ever had. We have employed with great I think policy interventions, we have employed every one of these ideas over the past 8 years. We've had big tax cuts, we've deregulated industries, we've allowed inequality to increase, and there's been a very noticeable absence of any kind of trickle down. Job growth has been weak. We're obviously in a downturn right now. I told you earlier about the median family income, who is actually worse off now than they were at the prior peak. Poverty is higher now than it was 6 years ago. So this notion of, you know, cut taxes on the rich, cross your fingers and hope it trickles down, I think has been very discredited. One final point on this. You mentioned that Obama wants to cut the corporate tax rate, and it's true. He wants to cut the corporate tax rate from 35 to 25%. And one of the things that McCain wants to do, one of the things that Obama has been going around saying, which is true, is that that's going to cut Exxon's tax bill by $1.2 billion. Now, again, the optics of that would seem to me to break very badly for McCain at a time like this. So I think there may be absolutely good reasons and good rationales and good times to talk about those kinds of tax changes. I wouldn't say that this is one of them.
Yeah. You know, remarkably so, considering all the, and you don't want to get into a John McCain bashing session here, but he certainly has some challenges ahead of him. But we'll see the polling numbers now. The polling numbers nationally, I think even to a certain degree, state to state, are much closer than many people expected them to be. So you have to think something is making sense to somebody out there about what he's saying, and he seems to think that a lot has to do with the gas tax, the summer gas tax moratorium that he's proposed, because he keeps repeating it over and over again, despite the fact that people have criticized this as something that just simply can't work. Your opinion?
Well, he might be right that is boosting his numbers in the polls. And you know, the thing about it is you say you don't want to bash McCain. I don't want to bash McCain either, especially the old John McCain. I mean, John McCain in 2001 and 2003 was a stalwart, truly a maverick, who stood up against the Bush tax cuts for the following reasons. He said, and I quote, "I cannot in good conscience support these tax cuts at a time when rich people are doing so much better than everybody else, and in fact this country is, you know, spending a lot of money on a war. It doesn't make sense to him. It didn't make sense to me, and I don't think it made sense to a lot of people." And when he said that, I thought, boy, there's a Republican I can really respect. What's happened lately is different.
Yeah, and I suspect it has something to do with his need for affection from the GOP,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, which still hasn't really embraced him.
He's trying to bring together that fractured base. You know, the Maverick is trying to come back home, and you know, again, he's trying to sort of walk a fine line. You know, he wants to maintain the Maverick image, but he also wants to win over kind of the soul of the Republican Party. So it's a tough dance for a guy with his record.
Yeah, you know, this week we're just talking about Senator Obama. A lot of people criticizing him because it feels as if with a lot of what he's saying, he's moving closer to the center. I mean, maybe John McCain should take a page from that book and go back to where he was, because you reminded me. I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but with the John McCain that we're seeing here today, much different than the person we saw before.
Well, but like you said, the Barack Obama we're seeing now, not so much on the economy, but on you go to war, you talk about Second Amendment, and other issues. He's really so surprised a lot of his supporters with his move to the center,
It's called the general election.
Indeed.
That's old.
But that undercuts his kind of reason for being as a different kind of politician who'll tell it to you like it is, tell you things you don't want to hear sometimes. And I think that was the kind of the crux of his appeal, and is the crux of his appeal. And I think he goes into dangerous water when he starts kind of sounding like a politician.
I mean, a lot of his supporters are very unsettled by this recent move to the center, as Michael suggests, and I think they're going to be watching him very closely in coming weeks. Now, part of the calculation may be, well, folks, where are you going to go? That is one of the things that happens in the general. But as both of you have suggested, that's one thing if you're a Bill Clinton and you're just a born triangulator. That's not how we think of Barack Obama.
Yeah, again, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
A couple of months ago, they were saying, well, where's the specifics? Okay, well, I come out, I give you specifics, and all of a sudden, you don't like the specifics I'm giving you because they seem to move me back towards the center? Pull my hair out here. 62,000 jobs, I think, in the last estimate were lost. That's the sixth straight loss in jobs. Are we outsourcing too much in this country? It seems to me that if we weren't outsourcing and we had some of those manufacturing jobs back and factories we're producing our own goods, that would make a dent in this job picture.
That would or wouldn't?
Would.
Yeah, it would make a dent. I mean, especially in the manufacturing side. I don't know that I would say we are outsourcing too much, in the sense that we are aggressive players in the global economy, and part of that is work that used to be done here is done over there. Where I would say we've really dropped the ball is that it's one thing to be, as I said, a player in the global economy and take advantage of the attributes of globalization. It's another to ignore sectors at home that are really being hurt. So manufacturing is the best example. You talk about manufacturing job loss over this downturn. That's nothing new. We've been shedding manufacturing jobs since really about 1998, and that's only because we had a short break there in the mid-90s when we added jobs to the sector for a while. It's been in a long-term decline. Manufacturing employment as a share of the economy is down to 10%. That's the lowest it's ever been. That is a real problem, and that is something that public policy could and should do something about. I don't think that means we necessarily outsource less. I think what it means is that we figure out ways to create greater domestic demand and global demand for our very productive manufacturing sector.
Yeah, because actually, manufacturing output is at a record high in this country, and it's just done more efficiently with fewer workers. And it's tough. I don't know how you turn the clock back on what's happened with globalization, but I think one thing a lot of policymakers are talking about now is what do you do as a society to cushion the blow against people who are disproportionately impacted, like people who lose their jobs when a factory closes. I mean, we all, people argue, and maybe there's something to this, we all benefit if something's made in a lower cost economy and we buy buy goods more cheaply, at X department store. And there's maybe an argument there, maybe there's not. But nonetheless, I don't know how you kind of reverse the trend, but I think the safety net that used to be in place has really been shrinking for a lot of people. I think it's something like a third